Kiev has alerted that any disruption in U.S. arms shipments could motivate Russia to extend the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, now entering its fourth year. On Tuesday, the White House revealed the suspension of certain weapon deliveries to Ukraine. The move aligns with the Department of Defense review aimed at prioritizing America's interests, according to White House spokesperson Anna Kelly. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky mentioned that the two nations are discussing the specifics of the supplies, while the foreign ministry cautioned that postponements might only prolong aggression and terror, rather than fostering peace. In particular, the ministry stressed the urgency for Kiev to bolster its air defenses, given the continuous missile and drone assaults from Russia. A U.S. diplomat stationed in Kiev was invited for consultations at the foreign ministry. However, Ukraine's defense ministry indicated it had not officially been informed by the U.S. about any suspension or change regarding weapon shipments and advised against speculation based on incomplete information. Still, the ministry underscored the necessity of consistent and united pressure on the aggressor as a pathway to ending the war. Ukraine experienced its most extensive aerial assault since Russia's full-scale invasion over the weekend, with over 500 drones and missiles targeting its cities. U.S. officials did not immediately specify which deliveries are being paused. Reports from NBC suggest the delays might involve Patriot interceptors, howitzer shells, missiles, and grenade launchers. Since Russia's invasion in February 2022, the U.S. has provided tens of billions in military assistance to Ukraine, which has prompted concerns within the Trump administration regarding depleted U.S. stockpiles. The Kremlin responded positively to the news of reduced weapon supplies, asserting that less armament to Kiev would quickly bring the conflict to a close. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov stated that fewer arms for Ukraine means the sooner the special military operation ends. Fyodor Venislavsky, a Ukrainian parliament member, called the decision troubling, especially given the terror attacks Russia is perpetrating, describing the situation as quite unfavorable. A Ukrainian military source conveyed to AFP that while Europe's efforts are commendable, Ukraine heavily relies on American ammunition, making it challenging without U.S. support. European allies of Ukraine have allocated billions in military aid over the last few years. Nonetheless, not everyone supports military aid for Kiev across the European political landscape. Czech President Petr Pavel, a NATO advocate, mentioned he couldn't guarantee further ammunition assistance for Kiev without knowing the outcome of upcoming Czech elections. Concerns over dwindling U.S. military inventories have influenced the Pentagon's decision, according to a CBS News source. Although Kelly reaffirmed the unmatched strength of the U.S. armed forces, the suspension of military aid follows less than a week after President Donald Trump and Zelensky talked about air defenses at the NATO summit in the Netherlands. Trump remarked to the BBC that U.S. officials are exploring options to supply additional Patriot systems to Ukraine, noting that while past interactions with Zelensky were sometimes challenging, he couldn't have been nicer. Both leaders had a notable dispute in February, after which Trump paused military assistance, a decision originally set by the Biden administration, and halted intelligence exchanges with Ukraine. These restrictions were eventually lifted. In April, a bilateral agreement granted the U.S. access to Ukraine's mineral resources in return for military support. In the meantime, French President Emmanuel Macron engaged in a 2-hour telephone conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin, encouraging a ceasefire in Ukraine and initiating discussions for a durable and stable resolution of the conflict. The Kremlin described Putin as reiterating to Macron that long-standing Western policies are accountable for the war due to ignoring Russia's security concerns. Last month, in St. Petersburg, Russia's leader expressed his belief that Russians and Ukrainians are essentially one people and claimed shared ownership over Ukraine. While still unverified independently, Russia has progressively advanced in Ukraine, with recent claims of full control over Luhansk and portions of the Dnipropetrovsk region.